guest speaker, but he didn't show. There was a gentleman that was 95 years old. He was in the town of Yarmouth. He served in World War II. He served in Korea. And he served in Vietnam. He would have been a special guest. I hope he's healthy as well, because like I said, he didn't get to be here tonight. So I'm missing this gentleman. His name was Albert Madden. He lived here in Yarmouth. So I was going to let him talk about World War II. There's nobody else there, I don't think, that served in World War II that I can see. So we're going to move on to the Korean War. And right before I go into the Korean War and bring up my first guest speaker who represents the Korean War, I just wanted to write some things down that I read in books, heard from Korean vets, and I just wanted to share them with you real quick. First of all, for all combat veterans, war leaves us all scared, some more severely than others. For many, it requires courage to break open old wounds. No man who has survived combat ever forgets it. But be he a coward or hero, it's a unique experience. For a brief period in his lifetime, he has a place in history as a participant in a dangerous event. Most men face their fears and won. Others might have lost, but none have forgotten. For all the veterans. I want to read something real quick. It's a gentleman who's a special. It was a Marine, and it's not. I'm just picking on Marines or not. But during the World War II island fighting in the Pacific, Jim Day found himself in Okinawa. In 1945, after 2 years in the Corps, Day was a veteran, a corporal, and a squad leader with George Company 2nd Battalion, 22nd Marine 6th Division. He attracted particular notice in mid-May during a battle for a key hill strangely resembling the large loaf of bread. Among the fiercely defending Japanese strongholds was a group of 3 low hills, mutually supporting and honeycombed with deep tunnels with a loaf-like terrain called Sugarloaf in the center. For almost a week, Marines fought across the valley and up forward slopes of Sugarloaf, only to be repeatedly repulsed by the tenacious and skillful Japanese Marines. I'm sorry, about the Japanese defense. Fire and counterattacks from the adjacent hills rendered Sugarloaf nearly impossible to take and even more difficult to hold. Corporal Day and his squad became pinned down in a bomb crater, a terrain position forward of the Marine lines that was critical to the continued assault on the hill. The squad was ordered to hold the position until it could be reinforced. But the Japanese had other plans. They did not want the Marines on Sugarloaf, and they were determined to drive them off. It was not long before barrages of enemy artillery killed every Marine in the crater except 2, Jim Day and Private Dale Beretti, who was sick with dengue fever and so severely wounded that he was unable to lift a rifle or throw a grenade. The fight was up to 18-year-old Corporal Day to retain that position and single-handedly hold off the Japanese infantry assault. For the next 4 days and 3 nights, he was equal to the task. Reinforcements were unable to reach the courageous young man. He survived on sheer adrenaline and virtually alone. Continued to fight, hearing wounded Marines calling for help behind him. He left the crater and one by one dragged, carried, and pulled 4 men into the relatively safety of his hole. Then he went back for the machine gun and ammunition. The machine gunner was soon killed while helping Day to fire the gun against the enemy attack. The same round that killed the machine gun runner disabled the gun and wounded Day in both hands. The 3 other Marines also died, and Day was again fighting alone, a Marine historian later wrote. For 4 days and 3 nights, he held the right flank of Sugarloaf alone against infantry and artillery attacks, during which he was wounded in both hands, his legs and his groin. During the entire time, he had no artillery or air support, for he had no radio. Although Vitelli could not help him in the fight, he refused to leave Day. Delirious from pain and fever, and with Bert injured, he stayed by his side until the end. When Sugarloaf was finally secured on May 17th, there were 8 dead Marines, their bodies literally blown to pieces by artillery and mortar fire. and 12 dead Japanese in the crater with Jim and Bertelli. The bottom of the muddy crater was filled with blood mixed with water from the inclement rain, body parts floating in the water. On the rim of the crater, and stretching for 70 yards to the front, were more than 100 dead Japanese. The air was heavy with the smell of death. By the time it was secured, the Sugarloaf area was blasted into a lifeless, rocky moonscape. In the closing days of the campaign, far south of Sugarloaf, Dale Bertelli, back in the fight, was shot dead. Jim Day was grievously wounded in medevac. Corporal Day was offered a battalion commission on Okinawa, but it was turned down. Later in '52, he accepted a commission and served as a Marine officer in the Korean War, and again in Vietnam. When he retired from the Marine Corps on December 1st, 1986, General Day was believed to be the last active duty Marine officer to have fought in all 3 campaigns. That is a true veteran. With that said, I'm going to bring up a veteran. He's 79 years young. He runs road races. He plays men's hockey with us old guys, 50 and older. I'm only going to be 55, and this guy's 79. But he's a special man. He's a Korean vet. He's a local guy. And I appreciate what he has to say, what he does, and that's why I invited him to be here tonight. That time I'd like to bring up Mr. Larry Cole.
Al Madden not here. Anyway, as Tad says, we fight the over-the-hill gang hockey wars on Tuesday nights in Hyannis. Some nights I'm the porous defense in front of him, and on other nights I'm shooting at him with something that he can handle with his bare hand. So another dimension of his craziness, besides being a Marine, is that he's a goalie. I'm not a Marine. I have a granddaughter who is. I went down to camp to Paris Island in February to graduation and got the 2 days of maximum marketing mode from the Marines. That's called Marine Corps 101 and other things for parents, grandparents, and relatives. I was very proud of my granddaughter. They were washing people out for the least excuse, because downsizing is coming. Then I went down again to Camp Geiger for graduation for Marine combat training. And from there they sent her to Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is the Army Signal Corps headquarters, where she's in a satellite communication system operator course. Anyway, my other Marine connection is that I ran the Marine Corps Marathon last year, and I'm doing it again this year as part of a Gold Star Parents group that Steve Zarhos connected me with. On March 27th at 12 noon sharp, I was in Providence at the VA hospital, where I drive every other Wednesday. I drive veterans over for their appointments, and I was online trying to register, and so were 40,000 other people. And at 1 o'clock, I soon hadn't registered, and my passengers were ready to go home, and when we got back to Hyannis, it had closed out. So I turned to Steve, who I knew had numbers. I'm running with a group called Team Chris, for Chris Shearer, whose dad and family are in Northport, that's Long Island in New York. Let me point out that Jim Shearer and his family were up here for the Big Nick's ride last week. If there's an event for veterans going on or near the Cape, Steve is involved in it somehow. He's at least present. He runs races carrying the flag. He sponsors races. I'm going to switch to serious now, and we'll use a little of the Socratic method. Anybody know what day this is?
60-year anniversary.
of the Korean War.
60
The
years.
60th anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War.
Yep.
The documents were signed by the generals at Panmunjom at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the ceasefire went into effect at 10 o'clock at night. I was at the front with the 5th Regimental Combat Team. The front in the Korean War at that point had been for a couple of years a line along which both sides were dug in and with trenches, bunkers, and there was scraps here and there, firefights over a hill or two to try to get terrain advantage. And in the towards the middle of July, there was a bulge in the line about 3 miles northward between something called, a place called Christmas Hill and another place, and we nicknamed battle sites with wonderful names like Sugarloaf and so on. And the Chinese attacked a Korean infantry division in the center of the bulge, and they overran the 555th Field Artillery Battalion, which was organic to my regimental combat team, but they were providing supporting fire for the ROK Infantry Division. They lost all their guns, a lot of ammunition. It's the second time they were overrun during the war. And the irony is, in the last few hours up until the ceasefire at 10 o'clock, the Chinese were firing our ammunition back at us from our guns. Now, an infantryman, and I think the Marines can appreciate that, our grim sense of humor was both sides were firing that ammunition so they wouldn't have to lug it out of the demilitarized zone in the next few days. Because everything had to be taken out of that 3-kilometer wide demilitarized zone. And in fact, some people in my unit, it was very hilly country, some people in my unit were carrying cases of grenades downhill and lost their footing, and then they lost more than that. Anyway, we had a ceremony this morning at our monument in Hyannis at Veterans Park. We're very fortunate to have it. It's quite impressive. It's a statue based on a picture taken by one of our members who was a combat photographer in the 24th Infantry Division. And it's of a guy, a soldier with an M1, looks like he's charging a hill. Anyway, it's next to the JFK Memorial. If you're visiting, or even if you live on the Cape and you haven't been down there, go and see it sometime. We had a ceremony this morning. Sergeant Challies and the Young Marines were there. Steve was there. Color Guards and Honor Guards from Marine Corps League detachments, VFW, American Legion, and so on. And we had the Korean Consul General from Boston down as one of our main speakers. And for those of you who are not Korean War veterans or don't pay a whole lot of attention, the older generation of Koreans are very generous in their praise and in their thanks and their gratitude for the fact that we were there. And the Consul General, he's grown up. He was born six years to the day after the ceasefire. And we all know what South Korea has become. It's become a world-class economic power, and belatedly, it's become a democracy. And what's to the north? The worst communist tyranny still on the planet. Anyway, I had a personal experience about the gratefulness of the Koreans. When I ran the Marine Corps Marathon last year, I had a tank top on that said Army on the front, and I had stenciled on it F Company 5th RCT, Korea 53-54. And a few miles into the race, a young Korean-American man went by me, and he said, "If you had not been in Korea, I might not be here today." Thank you.
That's true.
You had John Wayne, we had Audie Murphy. Wonderful. You are a great man.
Larry, thank you very much. You know, one of the things I was going to say was in my notes, but Larry just reminded me. In World War II, we were fighting in the Pacific, and we were fighting in Europe. If, I say the word if, we would have lost, we weren't going to. We had great allies. We had smart people. But if we would have lost, would we be speaking Japanese today? Would we be planting rice paddies? If we would have lost, would we be dictatorship? Would we be acting like Hitler? But we didn't lose. We're not planting rice paddies. We grow freaking potatoes, and we have cranberry bogs. And cheese turds. I'm telling you right now, there's nothing. I don't have that paperwork in front of me, so I'm going to wing it again. I must have lost more pages than I thought. There's nothing more proud. I'm going to talk about being proud. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud about where I've been, what I've done, where I plan to go, and what I'm going to do tomorrow. That's the kind of person I am. I'm proud of my family, my parents. I'm proud of my friends. I'm proud of my country. I'm proud to be a Marine. But there's nothing more proud than I am of that color right there in that flag. That's the best thing to be proud of. An American. That's who we are. Hey! In the mid-50s, there was a shortage, and the shortage was brass. The United States didn't expect to have a need in brass. So those who have ever been on the range, remember you pick up your brass and get off the line. You know, pick up all the brass would be the shell. After what's left over from flying around is the brass shell. And believe it or not, during the Korean War, from what I've been reading in history, is that there was a shortage. So they had, after firing at the enemy, they gave them and made them find time to pick up and return their brass, so they can get more, get it back to the States, get it reprocessed, and do what they need to do. Even the tankers had to save those big shells and pick those up. That's what we had to do, and what we did was to, save our own asses. So, with that said, all right, what we're going to do is move on to our next guest speaker. We're going to move into the Vietnam era. Before I do that, I would like, matter of fact, I forgot to do something earlier. I want all veterans to please stand up. All veterans, if you're a veteran, male or female, please stand. Stand up. I want you veterans to turn around and look at all these men standing. Look at them. Thank that veteran, because we worked as a team. It doesn't matter what branch you were in. If it wasn't for the Marines, we wouldn't have got there without the Navy. If it wasn't out from the support from the Air Force, we wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for the Army to do what they need to do, how about the Coast Guard? It's a team effort. We're all in a different branch, but we are Armed Force veterans. So turn around, shake hands with a vet, and say thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into the Vietnam era. Thank you. Thank you for being my father. All right, we're going to move into the Vietnam veterans. The Vietnam veterans didn't get the love that the troops get today coming back. Let's face the facts. it wasn't the same. Today, it's great. They get these parades, they get these warm welcomes home. They're heroes. Superheroes, because we grew up, were Batman, Robin, Superman. As kids, those were our heroes. But in real life, they're not real heroes. The heroes are the veterans. The people who have died, the people that are alive. They are heroes. And I don't know how to ever say it any other way, but they're a hero in my way. My gang right here, we didn't have to go to war. We didn't have to go to war. It's not my fault, it's just my age. Okay, I went in right after Vietnam and I got out right before Beirut.
We scared everybody.
No, we scared everybody. But the Vietnam veterans, you know, they come back and they were told to take their uniforms off before they went back out of the airport and back out to get on a bus or whatever. They were told because they were spit on. They were told they were baby killers. And they were just doing what they had to do. All right? It's not their fault. It's just I feel sorry for the Vietnam veterans because it seems like they didn't get what the troops get today. It's a shame, but we can't change the past. We can only change the future and make it a better thing. So I want to give my love to the veterans of the Vietnam vets. Vietnam vets, please stand. If there are any Vietnam vets in there, please stand. All right, those Vietnam vets, stay on your feet for just a little bit longer. Vietnam vets, stand please. I wrote this poem for you guys, and this is again from reading books of history and stuff like that. I like writing poems. To me, they're songs. That's all a song really is a poem. You just got to learn how to play the instrument, or you have to be able to sing like Chance. But this is a poem that I wrote. Standing 10 foot tall and over 246 feet long, made out of black granite stone, is the memorial they call the Wall. From 1956 to 1975, we read a list of over 58,000 engraved names that never returned alive. You'll read the names of the fathers and their sons, brothers, uncles, cousins, and yes, even loved ones. Even though their number is small, there are only 8 female names on the wall. On any given day, memories are left behind. You would be surprised at the things you would find. From a love letter, pictures and toys, flowers that are just an old sweater. You will see someone's dog tags, plaques, medals, ribbons, and tightly folded American flags. Some will argue the cost and political reasons that were lost from who made this call, but it's clearly seen that the price of freedom is written on the wall. If you look deep into its reflections and listen, you can hear the call. Those are your brothers reaching out from the Vietnam Memorial Wall. Thank you. So with that said, I want to bring up my next guest. He's a Vietnam veteran. I've worked with him for a number of years. And the stories, that's what I like about veterans who served in wartime. They got some stories. They're good to listen to, and then I go home and I say, I'm glad I wasn't there. But if I was, I guess I would have done what he did. But the gentleman I'm going to bring up, we've worked together for a number of years. He's a special person to me. I could tell you a lot of good stories about this man, but I'm going to bring him up and just let him speak. He's from here. He lives here in the town of Harwich. And his name is Ron Edelson. Ron?
Thank you, Chad. Yes, we've known you now for almost 25 years. Hard to believe. It's been a long time. We worked together. Well, I was looking up in the dictionary the other day the word loyalty. And I opened it up and I got to the L's there and I looked through it and it said loyalty. see Tad Duart. But that same dictionary, it didn't have the word gullible in it. Well, I grew up on the West Coast, and at 18, like Tad, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I watched a John Wayne movie one night, San Iwo Jima, and John Wayne died in that movie. And a week later, I was in the Marine Corps. Because I said, nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to join the Marines. That didn't work out so good. Learned quickly. Well, I always wanted to fly. Grew up right next to the LA airport. I used to salute airplanes. Always wanted to fly. So when I got in the Marine Corps, I signed up for 4 years for aviation guarantee. They didn't tell me what guarantee, and I thought I was going to be flying. But at the end of boot camp, I found out my MOS was 6500, which was ordnance. Everything that blows up that you can load on an airplane, that's what I handled and had to go to school to learn how to do. So after school and the training, we got stationed at El Toro, California. And I really didn't like it there. It was a big base, a lot of people, and there wasn't much to do during the day. They're kind of stumbling on one another, so we decided 5 sets of orders came in. I volunteered for Vietnam. I graduated in 1966, so I'm 10 years ahead of the Tad. And this was now 67, and things were picking up a little bit in Vietnam. So all 5 of us went, got to Okinawa, spent 4 days on Okinawa, and got the rest of our shots, and then got to Da Nang. And I was number 4 in line. 3 in front of me, guys that I knew, were handed orders. They were all going to be helicopter gunners